Hi, this is Trey Pastor. I'm doing another Mr. Nightmare reaction. This is my second one. Three true cemetery horror stories to give you goosebumps. Okay. Again, why would anybody go to a cemetery unless you had to, unless you're going to visit somebody? I don't know. Especially would you go there at nighttime. People are nuts. Okay. There's just no way in the world I'm going there for any other reason. Yeah, exactly. Unless they carry me in there. I'm not going there for any reason. Okay. Nobody's going to dare me into going to a cemetery. Okay. Okay, but that's just me. Anyway, let me come back and I'll give you my reaction. Okay, let me put my headphones in. Okay, here we go right now. Go. Ooh, three cemetery horror stories. Ooh, eerie music. Story one. People are dumb.
When I was 19, my friend Sean, who was a big goofball, came over to chill in our basement as he often would during the summer.
Okay.
I remember he had a Coke bottle in his hand and I was eating Wendy's when he said we should check out that creepy little cemetery across town.
No.
It was the most random idea ever.
No.
And I even told him that. Still, we had no school the next day, and I knew exactly which cemetery he was talking about. I don't know if one should even call it a regular cemetery. It's just a small plot of land with maybe 100 tombstones at most. The tombstone's very archaic looking, and any time we'd pass, there would be no signs of anyone having come to visit within the last decade. The site probably dated back centuries, and it had this super creepy vibe to it because it was closed off by a gothic metal fence, and it was surrounded by woods on two sides, the road on one, and some old abandoned building on the other. Everything about it just gave scary vibes. It took a little persuading, but Sean managed to get me to want to check it out too. Ironically, it was a very cloudy, wettish kind of day.
Okay.
I guess conveniently adding to the mood. Sean pulled up his Honda to the side of the road. I told him to pull up more so it wasn't obvious. This was a low traffic road, so it would look kind of suspicious. He pulled up a few hundred feet down the road,
Okay.
and we got out and cut through the woods so that any potential passing traffic wouldn't see us entering the little cemetery. Hopping the fence in the woods was easy. It was maybe a 3 or 4 foot fence. Sean kind of took the lead on this since it was mainly his venture. He led us through the eerie little plot of land, and we looked at the archaic tombstones. They all seemed to be from the 19th century. The writing on some of them was illegible at that point.
Okay.
I know it sounds super dumb and cliche, but I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched constantly. I started looking around the surrounding woods. I told Sean how creepy this was. I know, he replied. Still, with the feeling of being watched, I looked at the abandoned building next to the cemetery, at one of the windows.
Oh boy.
For a brief moment, I knew I saw someone standing at the window, even through the fog, smudge, and dirt on the glass.
Oh boy.
They casually either ducked or walked away from the window. I told Sean we were being watched by someone in that building.
Oh boy.
And he turned to look at it as well. Then he went to look for the entrance to it. I told him don't. I said we should just leave before we get in trouble.
Exactly.
I stayed still by the tombstone he was looking at while he walked around the building. And then he found a way in.
Oh boy.
He called me over, but I stayed put.
Exactly.
Then I heard some loud kind of crack.
Oh boy.
So I looked in that direction, and there was this older man, probably around 55. Gray hair, had on a black raincoat. I believe he was wearing jeans, and he had a mustache.
Okay.
But that's all I really got of him.
Yeah.
Then he opened his mouth and screamed. Not just yelled, he screamed, "Get out." He screamed it so loud I thought I saw birds fly away from being startled. And just like that, I started to feel lightheaded, and suddenly everything went dark.
Oh boy.
The next thing I remember was waking up to being dragged in the woods.
Oh.
I freaked out, thinking I was being kidnapped. But when I turned and got up, I saw it was just Sean. Sean was freaking out about something. He told me to follow him and run back to the car, so I didn't ask questions. As we ran through the woods, I heard something close behind me, and when I turned, I realized we were being followed by someone, so I ran even faster. We got to his Honda, and he basically put it in drive before the car even had a chance to fully start. When Sean was inside that abandoned building, he found a sigil of Baphomet painted on the wood floor.
Oh boy.
Which is basically the sign of Satan.
Ugh.
Around it were a bunch of freaky dolls with buttons for eyes. You didn't get to see anything else in the building. because he heard the old man scream at me outside.
Ugh.
He came running to find me passed out on the floor, and he saw the old man slowly walking over to me.
Ugh.
He started to drag me away from the old man and into the woods. He actually literally picked me up and threw me over the fence to get me out.
Ugh.
I quickly came back to consciousness, and that's when we ran. I had only fainted one time in my life,
Ugh.
and it was at that moment. I don't know why I fainted, but it happening at a graveyard with some kind of satanic ritual building right next to it
Ugh.
makes it that much stranger.
Ugh. You're nuts. Should have never went there. Story number 2.
My grandpa passed away a few years ago. I was always very close with him. This past July, on his birthday, I paid him a visit at the cemetery. The cemetery he and my grandma chose to be buried at was about an hour drive from my apartment. My family lived closer, so they all went to his grave together. I had to go separately. It was a rainy, depressing day, and there's nothing worse than visiting a cemetery on a gloomy day.
True.
The gatekeeper of the gate asked for the plot number. I gave it to him, and he let me in. It's a pretty big cemetery, and I'd only been there a couple other times. Not as the driver, though, so I had a hard time finding it. I didn't see many other people, if any, at the cemetery that day. I'm sure the weather had something to do with it. Eventually, I found his stone and parked my car in the grass to the side. I put some flowers down under his stone, stood there for a while with my eyes closed, and prayed. When I finished my prayer, I opened my eyes and looked up. There was an old man standing about 5 rows of graves down, directly across from me.
Okay.
He was looking right at me. I knew this man, though. It was my grandfather.
Ugh.
But no, it couldn't be.
Couldn't be.
I rubbed my eyes, and he was gone.
Ugh.
Did I just have a spiritual moment?
Get out of here.
Or were my eyes and mind playing tricks on me?
Playing tricks on you.
Either way, I got the chills and I had goosebumps. I was quite honestly freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
I got back in my car, said, "Love you, Grandpa," and drove off.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had a headache on my way home. Not sure why. I was the only car on Prospect Road, a quiet road with dense forest on either side. Commonly, there would be deer crossing here.
Okay.
As my car zipped down the road, I spotted someone on the side of the road coming up.
Oh.
Which was odd. There were no sidewalks or a walking path on this road.
Okay.
I slowed down. And it couldn't be. It looked like my grandpa again.
Ah.
When I realized this, my heart dropped 1,000 feet, and I swerved the car accidentally. I desperately tried to regain control and come to a stop. Luckily, my car didn't end up in a tree, rather just skidded out in the middle of the road until coming to a halt. I immediately looked back to where I saw him, and I saw a deer on the side of the road, looking at my car.
Ah.
My heart was literally racing. I was terrified. I was not well, and I needed to get home.
Okay.
I made sure no cars were coming and got back in my lane. I focused on the road as best I could, given what I had just seen twice.
Yeah.
I felt weird the rest of the day. Not sick, but something wasn't right with my head. I went to bed early after watching an episode of my show. I woke up at like 2 in the morning to my phone ringing.
Okay.
It was an unknown number. My heart started racing again. Any call at this hour couldn't be good news.
Exactly.
I accepted the call and put the phone up to my ear. There was static on the other end. Finally, I said, "Hello?" More static. But what I thought I heard next, I couldn't believe. Just briefly, for maybe half a second, I thought I heard my grandpa's voice over the static.
Ah. Jesus.
I tried to say hello again, but I was too shook. Every part of my body was actually shaking.
Yeah.
Then the call cut to silence and ended. I called my phone provider the next day to trace the number. They couldn't. They didn't have enough data to trace it, apparently. Though I don't know if that was just bullshit or not. The events that took place that day and night were the scariest I've ever experienced. Do I think my dead grandpa was trying to contact me? I don't know, because that sounds ridiculous. You'd think if you experienced something like this, you'd be so full of emotion and joy.
Yeah.
But no, it still terrifies me. And I really still don't know what to think or how to feel about it.
Yeah.
Whether it sounds ridiculous or not, this happened. and I wonder almost every other night, was that really my grandpa on the phone?
Yeah. Maybe he just wanted to say thank you for coming to visit me. Okay. If you're not delusional. Story number 3.
My friends and I were very stupid when we were teenagers.
Naturally.
I was like 17 or 18 when this happened. It was the month of October, and I wanted to do something scary in the spirit of Halloween. There's a small cemetery about 10 minutes from where I live, and when I was drunk with a couple friends, I said we should sneak into it.
For what?
I'll make up some names for my friends.
For what?
Ryan and Mike. We were at Ryan's house. He didn't drink ever. So when I came up with the idea, he was the one to drive us to the cemetery. Mike and I were really the ones leading this. Ryan was just along for the ride.
Okay.
But then again, he hadn't been drinking. Ryan parked in some parking lot across the street. It was a ghost town because it was past midnight at that point. We made sure no one was around to see us as we hopped the fence into the cemetery. It wasn't exactly pitch black out,
Okay.
but it was slightly hard to see more than 10 feet in front of us.
Okay.
So we were all using our iPhone flashlights.
Okay.
There didn't appear to be any night security in the cemetery, so we kind of dispersed from each other. Ryan seemed to be following Mike more closely. I could still see where they were because of their flashlights.
Okay.
I went off a little further on my own, and I decided I'd start taking a creepy video. So I started recording with the light still on, of course. I recorded a bunch of old headstones and the general eerie vibe of the cemetery at night.
Okay.
I didn't see Mike and Ryan anymore, so I started to go look for them, still recording. I looked at my phone screen and froze. There was a woman, dressed in a white gown or dress, I want to say,
Oh boy.
with long, gray-looking hair.
Of course. Holy
She was looking down at the ground.
Ugh.
I looked up from my phone screen to look at her in person, but she was gone. I started to back away. I looked back at my phone screen, and there she was again.
Ugh.
Only now she was looking into the camera, or rather looking at me. I looked up from the phone again and could not see her once more.
Yeah.
So I looked back down at the screen again, and there I could see her moving closer to me. I started to scream for Mike and Ryan as I sprinted away from that spot.
Scream like a little girl.
Couldn't see their lights anywhere, and they weren't answering my screams. I had a feeling they were going to try to scare me.
Okay.
So I ran back for the fence of the cemetery to hop it and get out. I made it to Ryan's car and texted the two of them saying they need to get out of the cemetery now. They met me at the car minutes later. We all sat in the car, and I showed them the video I took. They had the same horrified looks on their faces I did. Now that I was actually watching the whole video, I could see the moment the woman slowly lifted her head from looking at the ground to looking at me, and then she starts to move towards me.
Ugh.
We could only see her moving for like a second or two before I start screaming in the video and running away. But the way she was moving, you could see no leg movement. It almost seemed as though she were floating to me.
Oh boy.
I have that video saved on my old iPhone 4S. But the stupid thing won't turn on. It gets stuck at the Apple logo.
Ugh.
I don't want to reset that phone until I can get that video off of it somehow. My friends firmly believe the woman in the video was a real, living person who also happened to be in the cemetery that night.
Yeah.
But me, having been the one to actually find her, and only being able to see her on my phone screen, well, let's just say I was never a believer in the paranormal until that night.
Okay, those stories are, like I said, the second story wasn't that scary, to be honest. Yeah. Oh, the third one. Not a big fan of those second and third stories. The first story, that was creepy. Okay, the guy you fainting, and then some guy, you're getting ready to get dragged, and then your friend has to drag you and throw you over the thing. You're nuts. First of all, nobody's gonna talk me into going to a cemetery. That's freaking nuts. Okay, that's just freaking nuts. But the second guy, I think he was just, he had his grandfather on his mind, obviously, and then I think he just saw what he wanted to see and stuff. I don't think that was anything scary to watch. I think he was thinking of his grandfather, went to his grave, then he happened to see an image that reminded him of his grandfather. So I don't think it was a real person or anything. And this, as for the phone call, come on, that was obviously that could have been just a random call. So I don't buy that second story at all. This third story, again, these people are nuts going to cemeteries. They're freaking nuts. Okay, I think the best story was the first story with the your friend talking you into other guy into going to the cemetery. Like I said, nobody's gonna talk me into going to a cemetery. That's freaking nuts. Okay, I'm not doing that. Okay, I don't give a crap how good a friend. I don't care how bored I am. I'm not gonna go to a cemetery. I don't care how boring or bored I am. Nobody's gonna convince me to. Why don't you just go to a cemetery? Let's go to visit a cemetery for some random reason, just to hope. No, that's not happening. Okay. Anyway, let me know what you think of these 3 true cemetery horror stories to give you goosebumps. Again, the first story I think was the scariest thing. Well, yeah, that because obviously it looked like maybe I don't know if that guy was a Satan worshiper, that older man, and whatever he did made you pass out. And that first story made him pass out, and then luckily his friend heard him, that guy screaming, and came and got you before that guy dragged you off and made you a human sacrifice. So again, that teaches you do not go to cemeteries under any circumstances. Okay, okay. If you want to visit somebody, a relative, visit them in the daytime when the sun is out and people are around. Not at night. That's just freaking nuts, and that's asking for it. Okay, so again, the first story to me is the best. Okay. Anyway, I'll leave a link to Mr. Nightmare's channel in the description box. You can check it out for yourself. I also have links to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram in the description box, as well as a link to my other channel, All Views and Opinions. Please check that out as well. And this is Trey Pastor saying so long and take care.